Get Pucked. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Get Pucked podcast. Dave, Matt, and Vito here. Second episode of 2024. Thanks for tuning in. We're not going to get too much, I don't think, in this particular episode about talking about the last couple games from the last episode to now. But one thing I do want to talk about was the game yesterday at the time of this recording, which was against New Jersey. And in particular, Joshua Roy gets his first NHL goal, and it comes off of a sweet dish by Sean Monahan, who just held and really wanted Quad to net that first one. And his play this season in particular has been pretty outstanding. Thankfully, knock wood, he hasn't had any brushes with injury again. He looks really, really good. And so one of the latest things that have been out there in sort of the rumor mill, and it actually got brought up at Hughes' presser, was supposedly there's this gentleman agreement in place that Kent said, "Hey, Sean, sign him 1 year, and don't worry, by trade deadline, I'll look to move you to a contender if we're not really in the position to make the playoffs." Now, of course, Kent Hughes doesn't come out directly and say yay or nay to this, but it all signs are pointing to that's probably the case, and it's all likely that he's going to be traded. And given his play this season, there's now back to sort of the high expectations of a higher return for him. So I'm just curious, boys, because does this team really need another first-round pick, late first? Is that really what they need with the stockpile of picks they have right now? Is that what he's going to net back? A 27, a 28, a 29th overall pick? Or can Kent and Jeff get a little bit funky? Could they go and look at a team and say, you know what, you guys are going for the cup. You guys have quite a few prospects. We don't want to pick. Give us a grade A, top quality prospect, a guy who's probably going to be in the NHL next year and has a very high ceiling. Should they try to target something like that and do a 1-for-1? Or do you want something more like a good prospect and a second? You know, it's more about the prospect than the pick. What do you guys think? Does the team really need another first, or should they do something different? Davide?
I think I've been on record for saying that I'd like this. I'm done with the picks. You know, I mean, the picks are great. I know there's a saying you can never have too many first-round picks, but at one point you got to start moving things for things. You know, for prospects. So, what does that look like? And is Sean? I mean, look, Sean Monahan's he's good. Okay, don't get me wrong. Teams get stupid at trade deadline time. If it was me, I wouldn't be giving up too much. Like, I don't think he's a top 6 guy on a good team. You know what I mean? So now what are you giving up for, you know, although we saw it with Colorado, what they gave up to get Artturi Lehkonen. Artturi Lehkonen was a key piece there. Will Sean Monahan be that for some team? Maybe, perhaps, could complete a set team. But at the end of the day, what are teams likely to give up? And I would like to see Kent Hughes reach out and get an undervalued prospect, not another project or anything like that, but a prospect who's well thought of in this league, and that they could move up and again, clear, no project. I mean, unless there's a crazy project out there that you could see. But for me, it would be a prospect. I'd like to see a prospect come back, but my expectations are limited because I know a lot of people are high on Sean Monahan. But again, I think it's a Montreal-centric view on things where, yes, he's the best player the Canadiens can move, but is he the best player that's going to be available? You'll have to look at it that way. So we'll see what happens. Again, I'm done saying that this will never happen. You'll never get this because
finally,
time and time again, man,
you learned your Lehkonen mistake.
Prove me wrong. But at the end of the day, I just I'm excited to see what happens with Sean Monahan, but my expectations are limited.
That's fair. And just for context sake, he's played 44 games this season. He has 27 points, 11 goals, 16 assists. Has been very, very dominant in play from the eye test. You see him out there, you see him making moves, and you see most importantly what he does to his line mates, right? So to your point, yeah, is he a top 6 on a great team on Colorado, for example, or on Edmonton or something like that? Could he slot in there? Sure. Would he be put in there directly? No, but could you imagine having a guy like him in your bottom 6? I think that's the sexy part about acquiring him.
What you need in the playoffs.
And that's what you need in the playoffs. Go ahead, Vito. What do you think?
So I would still take the first, mainly because there's a lot of teams that give up their first round picks and all that when the time, like for trade deadline, and when draft day comes along, they're all seeking first rounds and tend to overpay to get another first round back, especially if there's a player that they like during the draft. I just can't see the type of player that you're talking about for Monahan or coming back for Monahan. I just don't see it across the board. Teams
Like a
will
top quality prospect.
yeah, I just can't
Okay.
see teams wanting to give up a top quality prospect like that for Sean Monahan right now. But to Dave's point, general managers tend to get a little crazy come the trade deadline, especially if they really think that their team is a contender this year, or if they feel the pressure that this is the year that they got to go all in on. So Sean Monahan is that kind of player that on a really good team, you plug him as your 3C, and you look and say, he could be a 2C on any team. And he's going to do well, right? So he's doing it for Montreal. He's playing the 2C role, especially since Kirby Dach went out and whatnot. But he could also play wing. So he's got that versatility, and he's got that thing about him, and he's very well respected around the league where teams will pay for him, especially that he's put his injury concerns pretty much behind him as far as we can tell. His hip issues seem to be a non-issue at this point. He's adjusted his game well enough. He's on a 50 point pace, but it's like you said, he makes the players around him better. There's a leadership to him. He's not a problem in the room. You can literally, he's that type of player that a team that's acquiring him would just plug him. So to answer the question, I would still take a first, maybe another good prospect. Doesn't have to be an A prospect because I just don't think teams are going to go out of their way to give that kind of player that they've been developing and whatnot, unless a player comes out and says, "I want out." So
unlikely.
At what point, like I know he's going to get traded, right? I know that there was things, promises made, but at what point does it outweigh the maybe they should have kept him or worked on keeping him as opposed to like getting a late first round pick that not sure it's going to pan out. Like if Sean Monahan's has that much value, you know what I mean? Like it's just to me.
That was my follow up. I agree.
Sorry.
It's fine because it's the natural question to ask. We're talking about returns. Everybody's talking about returns for him. Now, it's one thing he says, listen, guys, I really don't see my future here. I want to test the market. You guys can't afford me next season. Like there's other factors, of course. But if you simply sit back and say, is it in the best interest of this team to trade Sean Monahan or to keep Sean Monahan? You ask me my opinion, I'd keep him. I don't want a 29th overall pick. I don't think it's could it hit? Absolutely. As much as a pick in the second or in the fifth, things happen. These things hit all the time. But I'll play the odds and say that it's more unlikely that it hits. And Sean Monahan, what he's bringing right now, and to your point, this is a guy who's a leader in the room. This is a guy who's wore letters for a long time in Calgary. He's here. The team gels around him. He makes his line mates better. He's making the kids that he's playing with. Look at what he did with Joshua Hua in the last game I just mentioned before. I would keep.
Yeah, but you're assuming that whoever acquires him is going to sign into an extension right after. And
no, for sure.
In the offseason.
That never happens.
That never happens. We talked about that in the last season too. Oh, they'll trade this guy. They'll get a first, and we'll get him back.
Yeah, but
like Foley, remember that? No, it doesn't happen.
I don't want to. It's gonna sound like this, but there is a strong chance that he does come back to Montreal. Montreal is an up and coming team. There's a lot of things he's come out to say it that he really loves.
They all say it.
They all say it. I get it, Dave.
How old is Sean Monahan? How old is he?
He's 29 years old. He's not old.
Okay, so he's turning 30 this year. Let's say before the next season starts, he's turning 30.
Hold on. I think he turns 30.
He turns 30 this year.
October 12th, at the start of the season.
Okay, so at the start of the season, so this is a 30-year-old. Okay, people, and I've heard you say this too, that Josh Anderson has no spot on this team, and the contract that he has is too long because he's going to be too old for where the core is going forward. Sean Monahan has the same age.
Hold on a second. Whoa. That's a different conversation. Sean Monahan is very different than Josh Anderson. Centers who could win faceoffs and produce like Sean Monahan is producing at least a 50, 60 point pace. I would put a bit more stock into a streaky Josh Anderson. Not to say that I never pumped up Josh Anderson. I have. He does create space. I do think that Josh Anderson on the right situation, on the right team, would actually do very well. Plug him into Edmonton on a line with Connor McDavid or somebody to create space, or even New Jersey Devils with Jack Hughes, somebody that could attract other players to them and open up space for them is a great situation. I think Josh Anderson was a great acquisition for the Montreal Canadiens before, when they were going on playoff runs and whatnot, not for the rebuild. Okay.
So you think Sean Monahan's situation is good for the rebuild? 30 years old now, and I'm playing devil's advocate because I do believe that. But do you believe this?
You can't have a team just full of kids. You do need some vets and some good quality vets. And we've seen look at last year when Sean Monahan went out. Nick Suzuki still produced, but he started to struggle, right? Now, this year, we lost Kirby Duck, game number 2, and you literally looked and said, okay, plug Sean Monahan there. You know, at a point, he went on the wing, Christian Dvorak came, and they were trying to juggle the lines and play with things here and there.
So hold on a second. I just want to pump the brakes a second because I want to make sure that you answer what I'm asking here, because we both agree Sean Monahan on the team, we would keep him. Like, it's a good player, and you're like, yeah, okay, trade him for the first, but you want him back. So you do want him on the team. So if he stayed and never got traded, you wouldn't really be sad about it. My question is this: his contract's up. If he does stay here, it's not for another 1-year deal. So what's the term and what's the AAV that you got to give Sean Monahan to stay here on a team that's still rebuilding?
What I think the contract would look like? Something like Josh Anderson's contract right now. The guy's on a 50-point pace. You're looking at a $5 to $6 million contract, in my opinion. Usually, the way I figure these things out normally is, obviously there's exception to the rules, but
$1 million for every 10 points.
$1 million for every 10 points.
Yeah.
It's what I've told you. And anytime you get a player that exceeds that 80, 90 points, you're talking it could go to 9, 10, 11, and 12 million.
So you would be comfortable at 30 years old to give Sean Monahan a 5-year, $5 million contract?
We look at the caps going up. I think third line centers are trending towards that kind of cost.
Dave,
I'm not saying they're
Sean
there right
Monahan,
now.
5 years, $5 million
cost.
I think I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. It seems pricey, but the cap's going to go up. I think I'd be okay with it, to be honest.
I hate when we all agree on something.
I know it sucks to say.
It's so not fun.
I love disagreeing with Vito, but at the end of the day, like it's a
Would
real.
you
I would do it too. I would do it too.
I understand. Okay, Armia's paid $3.4 million a year. Right?
Okay,
would you pay?
Where you go with this?
That's a terrible contract.
Where are you going with this?
I know it's a terrible contract, but would you not pay $1.6 to $2 million more for Sean Monahan?
Okay, but like you could point that to any bad contract, but I agree. I can't argue with you right now because I agree with what you're saying. But it's a terrible argument because you could pick any bad albatross of a contract and be like, "Hey, Rick DiPietro, would you not pay $2 million less for Sam Malta?" You know what I mean, like
Rick DiPietro.
That was my favorite contract.
Okay, the Montreal Canadiens, if Kent Hughes was able to move Josh Anderson right now and get rid of that contract, but you say, okay, I'm grabbing that contract, I'm giving it to Sean Monahan, would you complain?
No.
There you go.
No. Am I swapping their contracts? So now Anderson is on an expiring deal this year?
No, Anderson's basically they moved Anderson and they just said, okay.
Okay. Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, it's scary too because, I mean, I don't want to go too much longer on Monahan, but there is the history of injuries that could always resurface. He looks good now. He's healthy now. He's playing well now. And hopefully for him and for everybody and whoever team he ends up on, that he stays healthy for the remainder of his career. I wish nothing but the best for this guy. I really like him.
I'm going to say this before you move on to the next question.
It's still there.
I'm not saying I wouldn't trade him. If a team comes out and gives the package that you look at, you say, I can't refuse this even for Sean Monahan, I'm trading him.
Well, you just said you would trade him for the 28th overall pick next season.
Yeah, I would. I just, in case people tune in at this very moment, I want them to know.
It's not a radio show here. They're not just tuning in the middle. 14 minutes into the episode.
You never know. There's chapters.
I guess. Okay, good. Another player that's actually had it's kind of simmered down just a little bit, but for the last couple of weeks, there's been like every other day people talking about different packages to get this guy. Gentlemen, is Trevor Zegras the answer to the offensive woes on this team? And if Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton came out and paid a king's ransom for him, would you guys be comfortable with that? Vito, you can start this one.
Listen,
I'll let Vito start.
I think Trevor Zegras if like Montreal Canadiens were to acquire Zegras, I think it would be a lot of hype. There'd be a lot of reasons to be excited for it. The guy's got some highlight goals. I personally am not a
Here we
Trevor
go.
Zegras fan.
Wow.
I'm not a. Will he score some goals that you're gonna be like, wow, yeah, he gets you off your seat. A couple of Michigan attempts, fine. But at the same time, this guy was really hyped up after that one Michigan goal that he scored last year, and they pumped him up and they put him on the cover of NHL 24 and NHL 23 rather, and all these things, and they were saying he's the next thing, and then what a fall from grace a year later. Now, okay, mind you, this is a season where he's had some injuries and he is playing in Anaheim and whatnot. And God knows what's going on behind the scenes there. But do I think he's the end? No, I think he'd just be another piece to a puzzle that you're adding there because I don't want a situation, a Jonathan Drouin type of situation where he comes here, can't handle the pressure. He's got the skill. He was, you look at him, he could do all the stuff in the world on the ice, but it just doesn't work in Montreal. Okay, and I just don't think. I think he'd have fun with Cole Caulfield and his buddy. On paper, it looks like Trevor Zegras would solve a lot of the Montreal's problems, but I just don't see him doing
65 points in 81
Yeah.
games last
Okay.
season, 61 points
Great.
in 75 games the season before, and he had 7 in 20 before he got hurt this year.
Fantastic. When he comes to Montreal, he's a 45-point player.
Ouch.
Well,
Look,
okay, Dave.
it depends on where you're going to, depends on what you're giving up for him because Trevor Zegras, at first, people thought first line center. This guy's, when they were talking about what contract extension he was going to sign, the money was going to be astronomical. It would have been stupid to overpay him. So I think a lot of people, they kept hearing, "Oh, Trevor Zegras, not a first line center, not a first line center. You can't pay him like you pay the big guys in this league." And then he got the contract was manageable. I think it was like 5.75. I think that the contract extension that he signed, or
hold on, I'll double check here.
I don't remember, but seems to me it was manageable.
It wasn't crazy.
It wasn't a crazy deal.
Yeah, he was holding out, but it wasn't crazy.
I don't think Trevor Zegras is the number one center for the Montreal Canadiens of the future. I don't think that's a guy. That's another guy who won't be. I'm adamant about you need a point per game player as your top line center in the NHL.
5.75.
Sorry, 5.75. See, that's exactly it. That's a manageable contract for a guy who gets 65 points, 60 points 2 years in a row. I'm okay with that. The thing is, it depends on what you're going to get, what you're going to give to get Trevor Zegras. But Trevor Zegras would be interested. I think it would make a big splash for Kent Hughes to go and get a guy like that, a guy that who the casual fan knows Trevor Zegras' name because of what he can do, and he's on the highlight reel and he's respected. But I wouldn't build my team around Trevor Zegras, necessarily. He's not a first.
No, but I'm not saying build a team because the team is already centered around a nucleus that exists today. But does Trevor Zegras as an additional piece coming in here?
Yes, it's interesting.
The ceiling that he has. But are you prepared to pay their first for next year, second,
top 10
contract player, top 10 they won't do it. Top 5 protected, let's say. A second, a roster player, a top defensive prospect. Let's say that's the package. And it's probably even more.
That's a bit much. And that's my point, is that at the end of the day, there's going to be another team that's going to be prepared to make that move. I'm thinking the Chicago Blackhawks would probably be interested in doing a move like that. Slot him behind Connor Bedard, and now all of a sudden you have an exciting team, a very exciting team. I think those teams are geared to make more of an offer on the Canadian on Zegras than Ken Hughes is. Ken Hughes is, to me, seems like a conservative-ish guy, and I just don't think that he would be making.
But hold on a second, because I'm not talking about whether they're going to win the Trevor Zegras sweepstakes and are they going to get outbid. Because I would like to know whether you would be comfortable with that kind of offer.
That's
you're emphatic no.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, sorry. It depends on who your defensive prospect is. You know what I mean? It depends on who you're giving up.
Anybody not named Caden Gooley.
I don't know.
I would imagine.
I'm not 100%.
It would have to be a defenseman on the left-hand side because Montreal's doesn't have a lot of depth on the right hand. And I wouldn't give Reinbacher. I wouldn't give Logan Mailloux in a package. I wouldn't give any of those guys because Montreal doesn't have the depth on the right-hand side to sacrifice for a Trevor Zegras.
Exactly. If you're going to trade those guys, again, it's interesting to see, okay, maybe you could get Trevor Zegras for this, but who else can you get for those guys? You know what I mean?
I got PTSD. I don't want to trade one of those defensive prospects like we did with Sergachev for a Jonathan Drouin. I don't want the same thing to happen for Trevor Zegras. If Montreal and Kent Hughes is able to, if Montreal Kent Hughes is able to acquire Trevor Zegras without touching the main core defensive prospects that we recently drafted, or what? Because if something like Reinbacher, for example, which is it's not happening, but let's say something like Reinbacher was to be the ass from Anaheim for Trevor Zegras, do you really want to trade a 5th overall pick for
A
Trevor
9th
Zegras?
overall pick?
I don't do it. Not for Trevor Zegras. No, you talk about a guy who's already there's so many similarities with the Jonathan Drouin.
And also,
but pop your
Yeah.
brakes, Jonathan Drouin. They wouldn't take Trevor Zegras and bring him on the team and plug him on a spot where he's not really played. They tried to make Drouin, who's a winger, a center on the first line.
You cut me off before I could even explain what I meant by all that. Okay, there's already issues in Anaheim with him. Apparently, there was a contract negotiation issues there. Now there's the injuries. He has an injury-riddled season. They want to move him. A young kid like this, they should be. And last year was like, we're going to build around this guy, him and Mason McTavish. And all of a sudden, it's like, okay, he's on the block. Him, Drysdale, everybody, get out. We're going to recycle because Patrick Beek wants to put his stamp on everything. So I don't want that in Montreal. I'm not saying I wouldn't trade for him. I just wouldn't trade a king's ransom for him.
Matt, would you have traded before they picked Reinbacher with that pick last year with all the hype going into the draft? Would you have traded that pick for Trevor Zegras?
Yes.
Plus, you're talking about all the other things.
Well,
because you're not saying because now. That's what you were saying. You were saying a top prospect defenseman, the first round pick next year. That's what you were listing off, right? That was your package.
So
I love the question.
Move us back a year. He doesn't get the injury this year, so I don't know about it. He's coming off a second season of 60-plus points. He looks like an offensive dynamo. He's drafted 9th overall, and he's a hit. He's not superstar status yet, but he's a guy who hit, and he's on an upwards trajectory.
So you want to take my
5th? You want my 5th overall of last season, which I don't know who I'm taking, and Michkov was still there and all this stuff. Yeah. Fine. You want a 2nd of, let's say, this year, the following year, doesn't matter. You want a contract player, which I would dictate you got to take which contract player, and it'd probably be Anderson, probably, because you want to unload the contract. And you want a prospect. If that prospect is not named Caden Gooley and is not named Mayu, I do the trade.
You're crazy.
I do the trade.
That's crazy.
I do the trade.
The only thing I could agree with you on is that if we were at the draft floor last year, or last summer, I could see the kind of scenario that would paint out that way. That you look at a guy who just came off 2 60-plus point seasons.
Really, man, like, 60 points, like
but I understand.
He would be one of the highest scorers on the team.
On the Canadiens.
What are we talking about?
Hold on. Time out. You're not wrong, Dave. For 60 points, you're not wrong. But because of the hype that was around Trevor Zegras, I could see the ask being there and being tempting at that time. Fast forward after this year, you look and you say, there's no chance in hell I would pay.
I would not have paid that whatsoever last year either. Like, Trevor Zegras is clearly not a number one center. 65 points is not a number one.
Okay, and I'm not a Nostradamus myself. I don't know what he's 22. Okay. How do you know he's not a number one center?
If Montreal were to acquire him, he's not playing center anymore. He's going to move to the wing. Kirby Dach is our number 2 center.
But Kirby, okay, boys. Listen. I'm not trying to beat the Trevor Zegras drum here, like I'm the number one fan. But I'm just trying to think about how this would play out. If I put aside the ask for a second, which is not fair because the ask is always a factor. But let's put it aside for a second. The Habs get Trevor Zegras. You have Trevor Zegras now on your team. He's 22 years old. He minus the injury that just happened, which hopefully it's not a big one and it doesn't affect his trajectory. But the way this guy was trending, all right, back-to-back seasons of over 20 goals. 60-plus points each time. You plug him, even if he's not on the number one and it's Suzuki there. You have Trevor Zegras as your 2C. Dach moves up or can go to the wing on the second because the Slavkovsky line is now really working well. So now you got Dach and Zegras on a line together with Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slav, right? That's not a good nucleus to have on your team.
Unless Martin St. Louis, unless the plan is you acquire Zegras and play him the way that Chicago played Patrick Kane, which is basically stay at the blue line and wait till you get the puck and go in, Zegras is not the guy for his Montreal Canadiens roster. There's no.
Also, okay, so like you like the 65 points or whatnot at 20. You mentioned age.
I like the trajectory.
Max Domi was 23 and nailed 72 points. So what would you have given up for him?
Again, but okay, fair, except for the fact that the situation, the context of the time is not the same as this time. They weren't in rebuild mode then. I'm looking at a guy, I need to lock this kid down. I want him on my team. He's 22. He's a top 10 pick, and he's doing this upwards trajectory. All right.
So you're okay, but is he like, I don't know. He had 7 points in 20 something games this year. That's not on pace for 65 points again. And secondly, so you'd be okay with your 1-2 both not hitting 70 points or both not being point a game players?
No. I'm comfortable if the direction of the team and it's kind of like the French term there. If the management of the team looked at them and said, we believe in them. Like they looked at Doc and said, this guy hasn't hit high numbers, but we believe in him. And we've seen what he was been doing, the trajectory that he was on before he got hurt. I'm a guy who's looking at this and saying, this is the moment in time where you gamble. You find these guys, young guys, you buy into them, you make them come into the team, you make them train under St. Louis, you make them work together, and then magic can happen. Because they're young and you can have a good team for a long time. He hasn't hit point per game, but if they look at him and they say he can hit point per game, like Suzuki hasn't been point per game, but he could be. He's trending that way. Caulfield hasn't hit 40 goals, but no one's saying he's not a potential 40 goal scorer. It's like inevitable the way that we talk about it.
But that's the problem all talk.
I know you don't like it if it hasn't happened until it happens. I understand. I'm a little different. I think that this is the moment to go for a guy like this, a young kid with a high ceiling that is on his way. Paired back with a guy he had a lot of success with.
I don't hate what you're saying when you paint the picture that way. However, I would not pay a king's ransom for Trevor Zegras.
What would you
pay? I'd consider a top 10 protected first. I would consider that. I would include one of the defensive prospects that we have. One of the ones that are, when you look at it, you just can't find space for them in Montreal down the road, on the left-hand side specifically. You'd have to move a contract to make the money work. There has been rumors that there was an interest in Armia way back when.
Armia, okay.
Well, it's a contract. It's just a contract, though. It's just a contract, though. It's just to make the money work. That's all it is. I'm not saying that the Army is going to change the Anaheim Ducks. It can't even change the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to change the Ducks. And maybe another later pick, or there a forward prospect that Montreal has that's a BC level, just something that's a package. But it's like I was telling you the last time you and I had this conversation. There are teams out there that would pay more for this. Because he's going to.
I'm not saying they're going to win it, but I am curious. Didn't you just say the package I said?
No.
You were prepared to give a first top 10 protected, a defensive prospect, a contract player, and an extra pick. That's exactly what I said.
Yeah, but the extra pick I'm talking about is also like a 10th and 11th.
Oh, so it's the second. That's the make or break for you?
Yeah, the second is a make or break for me. And I'm not. And defensive prospect. I don't care.
If you move Reinbacher, if you move a first, if you move, this is assets that you're moving. Okay, you're moving out. Okay, you're moving these guys out, and then now all of a sudden you have a top six of Caulfield, who could be a 40-goal scorer, but okay.
Yeah, here it is.
Every year you see him a little bit, and you're kind of you see him take the games off, and you see him, and again, we're still not at a way where people are game planning for him yet, in my opinion. So to me, okay, and then you have a guy, Nick Suzuki, who could be an 80 point a game player, but's not. Then Trevor Zegras, who could be a game player or not. Kirby Dach, who's littered with injuries, but could be a first line player if not. It's just it's all could.
You want the splash. You want the guy that you come in, you cement, and you say, this is who this person is.
It's just like, look at last year. Look at the hype on Justin Barron. Justin Barron could be a first-line defense. It's not going to look like it's not going to pan out that way. Look at the hype on all these guys that were like these prospects. It's silly to just continuously. And you're trading and you're trading assets. It's not as if you're signing Trevor Zegras to a free agent contract. You're trading probably your biggest asset right now, which is Reinbacher. That's the only guy probably that people.
How many points Reinbacher have in the NHL?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
and then-
shut up.
I'm
that's
just saying what he's saying. He
What I'm
hasn't done
saying-
anything yet.
Of course not, but he's an asset, and he's a
But
guy.
Trevor
they drafted-
Zegras proved that he's at least a 60-point player. Is that not better on pay? I'm not saying I would do
It's
it. I'm
not,
playing
because-
devil's advocate to your point. The man hasn't done a single thing. What are you trading? You're trading a potential.
Okay, but you're trading a potential guy who they just drafted. They're high on. They're comfortable with. He's a defensive guy. He's a guy who could shore up this blue line. It's something the Canadiens absolutely need for another hope and a prayer on a guy like Vito said. Like there's absolutely a world and a scenario where this guy puts up 55 points, and you're just like, Trevor Z. He's going to come in here with the how Montreal fans are. Okay, some of them are passionate, but there's a lot of just. The people who go to the games, a lot of them are casual fans. They're going to see Trevor Zegras and do all these amazing moves, and he's going to have the pressure of the world.
But guys, they're not going to make a move out of fear that the fan base is going to either be yay or nay about it.
I'm not saying that. I'm just adding that to the amount of pressure a guy's going to come in and see, and the role you're slotting him in. You're slotting him and then Suzuki, and now all of a sudden, those are your top two centers. There's nothing more you can do because you're going to be paying them like that way. And then what happens if both of them don't hit?
Okay, you want to know what
that's the whole point of the gamble.
You want to know what I would trade?
It's a huge gamble when you could probably trade Reinbacher if you're really going that route and a first-round pick and get probably somebody more better than that.
See, now that is a sexy proposition, and I would love for the next episode to come back and touch back on that and say, Dave, I've given you about a week now. Who could you go get me that would be cemented and is a point-a-game player and is a top-line producer for Reinbacher in a first-round pick?
Well, no, it'd have to be more probably, but I'm just saying he's an asset that you could center a trade around. And Trevor Zegras is just not it. In my mind, he's just not the guy.
And the most I would trade for Trevor Zegras, now that I think of it, Jordan Harris, a top 10 for first, and because I think there's no space for him down the road and people might not like this one because you see him coming around, Philip Meshar. Call it a day. Move on.
That doesn't get it done, I don't think.
I don't think it gets it done, but that's the most I would be willing to pay.
Right, that's fair, and that's why it won't happen.
Okay, boys. That is something I really would love to hear and see in the comments, which, again, we really appreciate the interaction we had the last time. I really like that people come and take what we're saying here and then kind of scrutinize it and then add their own takes. We love that kind of stuff. First off, would you trade for Trevor Zegras? And what would you be prepared to give up? That's the 1 and the 1B of the question I would love answered in the comments for people that are listening to this. Please let us know. I did have another question. There's one that I'll ask another time, but this is just a little something. McDavid got booed at the Bell Center every time he touched the puck. People are losing their minds about this. I'm curious, gentlemen, are fans entitled to boo whomever they wish to boo as paying customers, or is there a level of respect or disrespect in this case that they're giving to McJesus that he doesn't deserve? What do you think?
Is McJesus wearing a Montreal Canadiens jersey?
He's not.
He gets booed.
Boo that man. All right, Dave.
I actually like that take. I think it's ridiculous people get mad at this, but just to be contrarian a little bit, I can see how it bothers people. What's the point of booing? Like, you think it's affecting him? It probably just fuels him a little bit more. It's just a very random thing that some fans in Montreal, it's come to be a thing that Montreal things do. It's quirky. It's kind of like the ole, I guess. It's just odd. It's an odd thing, but I guess it's fun while you're there to just boo the heck out of this guy and say,
hey, it's everybody getting together, right? I mean, he said in an interview, paraphrasing, I believe he said that Montreal and the Bell Center is the only place that happens to him.
Well, yeah.
He goes, they're passionate fans and it's fun and I like it and whatever. Is it a bit much? Sometimes it's a bit much. He's never wronged this team. He's just the best player in the league. Guys, but as paying fans, boo who you want.
We have booed our own players because of a power play. You think we're going to boo the best player on the other team?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm all for it. Do what you want, but I could see why, some people are just like, this is stupid. I see it both ways.
Okay, but to the degree that there's talking about on social media, it's such a classless fan base, and I'm so embarrassed for them. Guys, it's a sporting event. Yeah. Cheers and booze is part of the thing.
They threw egos on the ice in Toronto. Okay, let's come on a little bit.
Come on, let's simmer down a little bit. If you pay the money and they're expensive tickets, you could do what you pretty much want to do, barring throwing things on the ice and doing really dumb things. But if you want to boo a player, boo him.
Habs fans have literally applauded and mocked both Patrick Roy and Carey Price after having a bad game and making a routine save.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the Bronx tier,
Routine
right?
Bronx
Isn't that-
cheer,
isn't
the
that-
best.
The
The
Bronx
best
cheer.
thing
Don't
ever.
care.
Yeah.
The best thing ever. The sarcastic
only
cheering
passion,
is
baby.
I'm all for sarcastic
Yeah.
cheering. It's the absolute
I'm
best.
for it.
But
I'm
look,
for
it's
it.
what makes Montreal special, right? Like people always say, "What's the best place to play?" It's always Bell Center. Like it always is. It's just because that's what makes it. It's different, you know. And if you want to go to the wrestling world, Montreal was one of the first towns to ever boo The Rock. All right, The Rock was a fan favorite. The Montreal was one of the first towns to ever boo. It's just how Montreal fans do. It's what they do. They're different than everybody else. It's fun. It's just keep it going. You know what I mean? Like I'm all right with it.
And a follow-up to that, I just thought about it because I read it the other day that apparently the LA Clippers are making some sort of enormous
the wall.
arena, and they have the wall.
Awesome.
Should the Bell Center implement, Vito, do you know about the wall? Have you heard about this?
I don't.
Okay, so basically behind one of the nets, so it's an oval shape, and behind one of the nets, where it's at the, I guess, the tip of the oval, if you will, it's going to be just a sea of nothing but fans of the home team, all wearing the colors of the home team, all jacked up with extra little noisemakers and whatever it is that they're going to get, and it's right behind them. So whenever imagine in an arena like the Bell Center where they're skating towards the Habs goalie, behind the Habs goalie twice, right? Because they would switch sides, but twice, they would see a sea of red. You're not allowed to be an opposing team's fan there. You can't wear the opposing team's fans' colors. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they're also reducing the price and making it a big section for students.
Yeah. And it's like 52 rows of uninterrupted seats. So
It's the whole thing. It's from the glass all the way to the ceiling.
So,
should the Bell Center do something like this?
Whatever
or should
gets
hockey
rid
in
of-
general do something like this?
Whatever gets rid of that guy with that fluorescent.
I think there's a place for it. It's cool. I don't think Montreal needs to resort to that. I think that it's fine. I think that's a cool thing for like Vegas to do. I could see Vegas, Seattle, teams who are struggling with their fan base should do that. I don't think it's necessarily for the Canadiens to do that. Canadiens have it down pat, man. They don't need to change anything other than widen the stupid hallways somehow. I know it's impossible, but they should have thought of that in 1996.
Some way.
Okay.
Once the Arizona Coyotes find an arena, maybe they should do it. For the 7 fans that they have.
They're doing it for the whole arena. It's all student seating, baby. That's the whole arena.
Exactly.
The wall
that's awesome.
has more seats than the Coyotes play in an arena that have seats in total. But I don't want to pick on the Coyotes. But anyways, I thought that was really cool when I saw it. I liked the look of it, the concept. I thought that was really neat. And there's an aspect of that, maybe not so much at Montreal, because again, right, passionate fan base, best in the league as far as I'm concerned, biased of course, but it's you look and scroll out. You can go to other arenas like in Buffalo, for example. You can see a sea of red there when the Habs are in town. You come and play a game in the Bell Center, it's all red, baby. Everybody's wearing the red and the white and it's the Canadian stuff. So is there a spot at the Bell Center? Maybe, like to your point, Dave, probably not needed. But just that level of like European soccer and that kind of like that, the cheers and the things that they do, like that, I don't know. To me, there might be a place for that. I think it's kind of interesting.
For sure. Just the ole ole, right? Like the ole ole.
The ole ole was a big thing.
I don't even know how it started, to be honest. I'd love to like interview the one person who came up and started ole oleing at the Habs game and somehow got 21,000 people to do it and do it consistently. Like it's such a fascinating thing, but it works. It works. And it really sets Montreal apart, and they use it everywhere. Like it goes off into the soccer games. It goes off into the Alouettes. You hear the ole oles.
Other fans do it to the Habs when they're getting blown out in their arena.
Yeah,
UFC
does it. GSP was getting the ole ole. The WWE was getting the ole oles. Like it's a Montreal thing somehow now, even though it's completely ripped off from European soccer. But it's awesome, and I'm all for it. I'm all for the. I mean, I don't want to shout out another podcast, but like there's other people here that they do little chants and stuff like I'm all for things like that. I think it's an exciting
it brings
thing.
People together.
It adds an element, and it's just
an environment thing. It's fun. I agree. I think it's fun too. So, gentlemen, we're going to end it there. A little ole ole for us for this second episode of 2024. Everybody, again, you make it to the end. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate that. Tell your friends, tell your mom. Doesn't matter. We'll take everybody and anybody who's into hockey. It's exciting times coming up. The trade deadline about 2-ish months away, I think. Still a lot of hockey between now and then. But this is going to be the topic now, probably moving forward for most people that are watching this team. So it's exciting to see the rumors that are coming out and the different trade scenarios that are out there. But again, the question that we're posing to everybody here, if you can, let us know, would you trade for Trevor Zegras? And if so, what are your trade scenarios, potential trades for I should say, that you would do to get Zegras back? And if not, and let us know why. Are you like Vito and Zegras is just, it's not a good player. We don't want Zegras. No.
I didn't say that.
I know.
Worst player in the league.
Terrible player. We don't want Zegras.
I never said that.
Bad locker room guy.
Never said that. Jeez.
Might have alluded to that one. So thank you very much. For Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and this, as always, was
Get Pucked.